Recording is starting. So again, welcome to our October 2022 virtual quality talk. And we'll start as usual with our thank yous. So thank you as always to the board members of the KWSQA who work hard to bring you these events and also who were recently very busy with organizing the Targeting Quality Conference. And we will also give a shout out to D2L, a local company here that continues to support our organization by letting us use their Zoom account for these virtual meetings. We'd also like to do our usual land acknowledgement as well, where we let everybody know that the KWSQA head office is located on the Haldeman Tract, and this is land that was promised to the Haudenosaunee people of the Six Nations of the Grand River. It's also within the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. And as always, we just would like to express our appreciation for the privilege to be able to live and work and build our software quality community in this area. Another reminder before we get into things here is just about the code of conduct. You can find the full version of the code of conduct on our website. And if you ever at any time have a question about it or would like to report an incident related to the code of conduct, please do let us know. You can reach us at info@kwsqa.org, or you can contact any individual board member that you feel comfortable with. Okay, some reminders about how to engage with our organization. So if you visit our website, kwsqa.org, there are a number of things that you'll find there. So maybe you have a proposal you'd like to make. Maybe you'd like to present at one of these meetings, or maybe you'd like to work with us on hosting a testing games event. That's another option, and there's a form on our website to connect with us about that. You can also purchase a membership to the KWSQA. The benefits of membership these days are mainly to support us as an organization. We've been continuing to offer these monthly events for free for a while now, so you don't need a membership to come to them. But if you buy a membership, it does help us out with our ongoing expenses. It also, as a member, gives you the privilege to vote in our annual election for the board of directors, or you could also run for the board of directors. And that's if you're within sort of our local region that you could become a voting member. And finally, you can also sign up for our mailing list via our website. Quick note about Targeting Quality, the conference that happened last month in September. Just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who came out, either as an attendee or a presenter. It was just so nice to see everybody again after all this time, and everything went really well and such a positive learning environment. And it was just really great to be able to host that event again after a couple of years away from it. We have some upcoming quality talks to let you know about as well. In November, we have Ian Douglas coming. The title of the presentation is a bit of a mouthful, but what you need to know is that he's going to teach a bunch of cool stuff about Postman that you might not have known that you could do. So that's what we're going to have at the end of November. December, we don't have a quality talk. We usually take a break in the month of December due to lots of people having holidays and special events around that time of year, but we'll be back in January, and we've got a very unique talk planned. Kenzie is going to share an interesting take on, I guess it's a lot of things. We'll share more details as it gets closer, but anyway, we've got that one booked for January as well. If you fill out the feedback survey that you'll receive after attending today's event, you will be entered to win a $50 Amazon gift card. And the draw will be taking place pretty soon, actually, at this year's annual general meeting. And speaking of that, it will take place on December 7th. And leading up to that, we're also doing our board elections. And so right now, the call for nominations is open until the end of next week. If you are a voting member for the KWSQA for this current year, you should have already received an email about this. The election itself will take place at the end of November, and we'll announce the results at the AGM. Okay, so finally on to today's presentation. Today we're welcoming back the PLATO organization. We just before you all joined the meeting here, we were just talking about how long ago exactly was it that we were first introduced to this organization, and it was in 2016 at our Targeting Quality conference that we first learned about this group and the work that they're trying to do. And it sounds like they've come a long way in the last 6 years, and so we're excited to hear the latest from them today. So they're going to share a little bit just about what their organization is and does, and also some great content about accessibility testing. So I'd like to welcome Denis and Abhishek to the meeting today, and I will turn it over to the two of you at this point.
Okay, well, thanks very much. Tina, and thanks to everyone for joining in today. Thank you for the invitation. I'll start with a bit of a story about PLATO testing and how we began and where we're headed. And then Abhishek, as the testing subject matter person, will go into the stuff that I think most of you are mostly interested in. I'll talk about our business. He'll talk about what we do. So I'm situated today in southern Saskatchewan in Treaty 4 territory, and a different group of tribes that it's the homeland for. I'm not a tester. I previously was a federal public servant that had a lot of years of experience working in different parts of Canada, mostly on what's known as the Indigenous file. And something that I'd always struggled with the work that I previously did was, in some of our communities across Canada, what does hope look like? If I'm born into Hatchet Lake First Nation, Northern Saskatchewan, or the community of Natwashish in Northern Labrador, what does it look like? What are my prospects for finding a way to make a living somewhere close to home? And I really struggled with that because I didn't really know what opportunities there were, other than depending on where we are in Canada, and our history here is mainly around proximity to whatever. It might be proximity to a mine, proximity to a city, proximity to something that allows the economy to maybe do better in that part of Canada. But in some of our communities, there really aren't opportunities. And then in 2012, I was somehow transported from the prairies, where I'm native, to Atlantic Canada. And there, through accidents and happenstance, I ended up meeting Keith McIntosh, who's the founder of PQA testing. And he and I had a conversation one night. We're in a business conference. It was a leadership conference, actually. And we thought, what can we do to create a business that would seek to do a couple of things. Number one, create opportunities for Indigenous Canadians to pursue careers in information technology, taking advantage of connectivity where it is, and then really it's a matter of talent development and investment in people. And the second one is, what can we do to help create wealth in some of our communities where the opportunities to build wealth are maybe not as strong as they are in other parts of Canada. So from that conversation, and I think it was June 8th of 2015, sprung forth an idea of PLATO testing. So I was, as I mentioned, living in Atlantic Canada. I had been for about 3 years. Keith and I met in May, had a conversation in June. In August of that year, I moved from New Brunswick back to Saskatchewan. And in September of that year, I got a phone call from Keith saying, yeah, remember that conversation we had? I have pulled together with some of my experts. We pulled together a curriculum for a training program. I contacted some people in New Brunswick that are involved with Indigenous training. They want to do something around technology talent development. We identified 12 students. They started last week. When are you coming to work for me? And so that was sort of the start, the idea of PLATO and how it started. And really, it is a focus on talent development. We use what we call a train and employ model, where we utilize it's now a 20-week in-class training course, about 800 hours of instruction on the foundations of software testing, kind of everything from estimation and sort of the basic knowledge that it takes to make a sound software tester. And then, of course, we're a consulting company, so we do a lot of work around professional conduct and how to interact with, the way I describe it is really bright people who have created something that we've found something wrong with. And there are two ways of communicating that message. One starts fights and the other one adds value, and we try to teach the way that adds value. From that course, everyone that takes our training program, we guarantee a full-time permanent job offer with PLATO testing. We generally train in groups of 15 is the target class. We've started with 9, we've started with 17. It sort of depends on the take up locally. And we walk through our initial foundational training course. We work with local agencies in different parts of Canada that specialize in providing funding and funding supports for Indigenous people who are interested in getting training for employment. And in the past, most of that investment has been around skilled trades and other things that are maybe local to that part of Canada. And we were something new. So usually, when I introduce myself, and part of our protocol is in order for me to go and ask a group of communities for something, in this case, money and their best and brightest, they have to know who I am first. So the first job that I have is to go out and meet people, let them know who I am, answer questions that they have, and then through what we sometimes call the Moccasin Telegraph, allow them to go and talk to people that we've worked with in the past to say, are these people for real? Is this employment promise a real thing? And as we've built our company across Canada over the last 6 years, we've been able to get through the door much more quickly because the promises that we make, we do try to live up to. And we believe that that promise of a job at the end of a successful training is the one promise that we cannot break. So even with some of the downturns that we've seen over the last little while, at the start of COVID, and even currently, the one thing that we do always commit to is that if you complete the class and you pass it, we promise you a full-time permanent job. The second part of our training program is a 12-week paid internship. So the goal is here's a group of, let's say 15 people. We generally have about 80 to 85% success rate through the first part of the class. So we may lose one through the initial training. So the next group will go into paid internships. And where possible, we will place them in a group of at least 2 on a testing project with a current client that we have. And that part is really to reaffirm some of the content and the knowledge that they've just learned. So here's actual, opportunity to go and apply some of the skills that have been learned. But it's also about the value of, yes, I'm doing this work and it's knowledge work, but I'm also getting paid to do it. It sort of reaffirms that the training investment on their part, is actually worthwhile. It's not just a training for some nebulous thing that might come down the road. It's actually training for a career. And our goal as well is so we have train and employ. We provide the training program up front, but we also do a lot of work around coaching and mentorship of those resources once they're done. So Abhishek is somebody who could speak to a lot of work that he's done since he started to help develop the skills of our newly trained juniors through the course of their initial couple of years of professional experience. The goal there is that really we want to make sure that people get the sense of success on projects really early, and that that once somebody feels like, yeah, number one, I've been trained. Number 2, I know what I'm doing. Number 3, I'm pretty good at it. We want to get them to number 4 is I want to be better. And then when we get to that point, we get sort of a self-actualization where people start to take a little bit more control of their own training and start doing a lot more work on their own rather than waiting for us to say, okay, now your next step in your training development is this. So, in 2022, we now have testing resources, Indigenous resources that are in there just going into their 7th year of professional experience. We have some that are now have bridged the gap from being a junior to now being intermediate. We have a couple that are doing some specialization in test automation. We've got a number that are actually sort of the beginning of becoming test leads. They're in charge of a small group on their own. And as we build the company, the goal has been to really provide some career paths inside of testing. So we've got sort of A to Z as far as the company goes in terms of the skill sets, and we want to find a place where we can for people to be able to pursue their career inside of testing within the organization or within other organizations. And we've had some people that have come in and said, I like testing, but I really would like to do this. I really want to be a business analyst. I really want to be a software developer or something like that. We've had some folks that have come in, tested for a while, and then have found another place in another organization, or have gone back to training to advance their skill sets. And for us, that's it's hard to see people leave, and we don't train them for other employers necessarily, but when we see somebody who's succeeding and is in a better place or in a different place than where they started, and that place is still in technology, we view that as a win, because that's really a big part of why we're doing this. When it comes to sort of the impact side of things, we see a lot of efforts on the part of government, on the part of school divisions, post-secondary institutions, to try and get more Indigenous Canadians into STEM. And so we see a lot of different camps, different robotics seminars, things like this, to try and get kids interested in it. And we definitely see the value of that. For myself personally, something that has been missing from that is sort of, I guess, role models or what I call the pull. So if I was to back it up a second, a lot of these initiatives are to try and push kids and direct kids into different training programs. But something that is missing, or has been missing, is sort of the pull. And that is that there are people in these occupations that are drawing kids from around them, family members, nieces, nephews, whatever, into the possibility of pursuing a career in this area. And when I think back myself, so I'm probably older than most people on this call. I'm a child of the 80s. So growing up in Regina, Saskatchewan, I can remember on Saturday mornings, friends and I, we would get onto the bus and we'd go downtown Regina to A&B Sound, or Sound the Record Man, or whatever it was called, and I'd buy my long play AC/DC albums. But I can remember sitting at the bus stop, looking up at some of the buildings downtown. You'd see Royal Bank or TD Bank or SaskPower, SaskTel, some of the bigger corporations in this province. And looking back at where I went to school, we would have career days, and there'd be parents that would come in, and mom or dad would work in this building, and I look up at the mark, or the wood mark on the side of the building, and say, I know somebody that works in that building. Maybe I could work there too. And I remember having that feeling. And when we go to a lot of our communities, there really isn't that connection. If we, or at least previously, there weren't that connection. And a lot of efforts that happened earlier on, late 80s, early 90s, to bring people into trades, to bring people into nursing and education. There was a group of people that went in first, those professions. And now, if we look a generation later, we actually have leaders that are Indigenous, that are, physicians, or that are in nursing, or even in engineering and law. And for me, and then those people that are in those positions are actually helping to pull other people into those careers. So that something that for me maybe was missing in technology, because growing up, I didn't know anyone who at least amongst my peers, Indigenous peers, who were involved with technology. I did go to high school with the gentleman who wrote the program for Control-Alt-Delete and the Microsoft Toolkit. Graduated with him. He was scooped up by Microsoft and has been in Seattle ever since. I haven't talked to him in 30 years, but that was sort of my closest claim to fame when it came to technology. 6 years after starting this, we're starting to see some of that pull that I've been discussing. I have a young lady. She lives in Fort Capel, Saskatchewan. She's about 45 minutes away from me. She was originally living in Alberta, working in the banking sector. Her parents are aging. They got, had some health concerns, so she moved back home to take care of them. And, over the course of a couple of years, night classes or whatever, she ended up picking up, business diploma. I think actually a BBA. She got a business degree. And through her studies, she discovered, I really like technology, and I've got all this background in banking. And she saw our course. We were offering a course in Regina with students in Regina and Sault Ste. Marie. It was right in the middle of COVID, so it was all sort of using Teams and everything at a distance. We accepted her into the program, and then she withdrew and said, I can't do this. My mother's turned ill. I can't do this. And I was quite disappointed. And I said, okay, well, when things clear out, come back. The next week she phoned me up and said, is there still a spot for me? And I said, yeah, there is. And she goes, well, I tried to pull out, but my father won't let me. And this is a lady who's in her 30s, right? And his message to her was, we're going to be okay, but this is too important. You need to do this for yourself and your family. So we accepted her in. She did extremely well in the course. And immediately afterwards, we're working with the client. It was doing some technology in the e-banking space, product out of Portugal, I believe, with one of their local credit unions here. And she was at home. Her son was at home. He's got a 10-year-old son who's in lockdown. Her parents are at home, and she's interacting with a test team that had members in Vancouver and Regina, I think Mississauga as well. The client was in Regina, the developers are in Lisbon, Portugal, and she's interacting every day and giving her reports and stuff. And earlier this summer, we had a APTN contacted us and asked us if they could, the Aboriginal People's Television Network, for those of you who don't know what that is, to see if they could talk to a graduate of our program. So I said, sure. And I thought of this lady, and so I was calling her and just doing some prep work for it. And I said, this is what they're going to ask you. And she goes, something I've got to tell you about this job is that my son watches me interact with people on TV while I'm doing this. And now when he's playing his Xbox game, if he finds a bug in the game, he grabs a screenshot and he pulls it over into an email and he types a bunch of detail about where he found the mistakes, and he sends that back off to the game developer. And all of his friends are doing this too. And I told her, Jennifer is her name. I said, Jennifer, that's the magic of what we're doing, right? So just through you and him watching you do the work that you're doing, it's creating a possibility for him that maybe he and his friends will one day do something like this. And whether it's in testing or in some other part of technology, that's good, right? That's what we're in this for. And I think that that's a big part of what we're trying to do, is actually help create opportunities to build a stronger talent pipeline in Canada, using all the things that I know that all of you know about every day, that you can work from anywhere, you essentially can train from anywhere. But really for us, it's a matter of investment in people. It's an investment in sort of the support of those people and their training, and a bit of patience, because our mantra is that the only way to become a software tester with 5 years experience is to actually test software for 5 years. So when we go to corporations and they say, yeah, can you give us, senior automation specialist who's Indigenous and bilingual, we say, no, but give us a few years and maybe we'll get you there, right? So that's been part of what we do. The third part I wanted to talk about is really just around the business side of what we've done. When I started, PQA was about 110 people, Canada-wide. And it was a big deal for Keith to make an investment to say, you know what, I'm going to change the nature of my company, and we're going to focus on developing this group of people in terms of building talent. And it's going to take some time, but it's something that I'm going to do. Number one, I think there's a business opportunity here. Number two, I think it's the right thing to do. And I'm a government guy. I didn't know anything about billable time and all these other things that I've had to become very knowledgeable about over the last 7 years. But I didn't realize at the time how big a thing it was to do. And I would love to say that it's been a straight line, from where we were to where we are, but we really didn't have a business model to follow. So we've been kind of learning and working as we go. And it's been a bit of a squiggly line, but 6 years later, I can tell you that the company is more than 3 times bigger than it was when we started, and the top line revenues are more than 3 times larger than they were. And that as we've grown and matured and been able to demonstrate that, yes, we are making an impact on communities, the sales effort has gone from us phoning and trying to explain to people to organizations phoning us and saying, how can we work with you? What can we do to help build talent? And can we build talent in this specific product area, so that instead of having to go with whatever our other options are, maybe we can develop that talent pool in whatever part of Canada we're in. And that's exciting because we're really starting to see the desire for an investment in Canada. And that's something that has made it very easy for me to come to work every day for the last 7 years. And then as far as the evolution of our business goes, when Keith and I first started out this discussion, it was like, what can we do to build wealth? And we do that through, of course, the salaries and benefits that we pay out. I think we're coming up on $15 million in salaries and benefits that we paid out to our Indigenous testing team over the last number of years. So that's getting to a stage where it's got some national impact. But we're also working to become a 51% Indigenous owned and controlled company. And we think that we will be there. We're at just over 30% right now. Waiting for a phone call from one investor today to get us to over 40%. We will be at over 51% by the end of November of this year. And that creates a number of other potential procurement opportunities and partnership opportunities with some of the, perhaps with some of the organizations that you work for. It's something that we're excited about because it allows us to grow not just our Indigenous team, but also our non-Indigenous team. So we're a little over 300 resources across Canada right now. About 80 to 85 of those are Indigenous, the rest are non-Indigenous, right? So as we grow our Indigenous team, the rest of the company grows as well, and that creates opportunities here in Canada, which we're excited about. I think that's a lot of talking, and it's not about testing, so I'll stop there. And we'll maybe get into Abhishek talking about accessibility testing, something he's really passionate about. And hopefully I didn't talk too long, so we didn't leave any time for questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Denis. I hope everyone can see me and hear me well. Okay, so first of all, again, every time I hear you, Denis, it's a goosebumps feeling since the day one I joined. And when with my QA career for more than 18 years now, the difference I had felt for a purposeful work is since the day I joined PLATO. It's been 3 years now, and the vision and the mission we carry as a team has always given me the passion to do more for testing, because helping your clients to do the best testing, yes, it is by default the nature of a consulting firm, but then going back home and pulling up Indigenous people to train them more onto basics of testing is something we enjoy across the board. With that being said, I'm also the head of accessibility practice lead for the entire company. And some of you might already know about AODA law in Ontario, which is tied to making sure not only physical buildings and parks and the job market is accessible, but also the software devices and applications should be accessible, and there are laws associated to it. The first project I did in accessibility was 10 years back, but that was again just to do a job for a client to build an accessibility report. At that time, I didn't think about that there has to be something more to be done over here and can be done a lot. When I joined PLATO, and then is when I thought that I'm anyway training a lot of Indigenous people over here on Jira and software management and tools and other types of testing, API and SQL. How about spinning up a QA course on accessibility? That's where we set up a center of excellence over here. We have more than 44 QAs trained and certified internally on accessibility. And with that being said, and looking at the time over here where I have to leave at least 10 minutes for Q&A, I will directly jump into a quick presentation which we have built for this call today. So directly moving into the slide, what is accessibility? If you can see from a couple of images over here, it looks like that if we don't think about software, accessibility is just to remove the barriers to access maybe a bus, maybe a job market, maybe entering into a building with these ramps. Yes, this is what the first thing comes to our mind when we think about accessibility. But if we think about software, Software accessibility has a lot of requirements, and if as a QA professional or anyone for that matter in the IT team, if you have come across a requirement on accessibility, you might have heard this terminology, which is WCAG. And we will talk about WCAG in a little bit, like what are the requirements and how we can test them. But yes, this is the portion we are going to talk more about how the softwares should be built and should be tested when it comes to accessibility requirement. Now, the question could be that how big of an impact is to the people with some sort of disability, and why accessibility should and is taking the center stage when it comes to requirement mandates. We are talking about 15% of the world population, which is facing some sort of disability. And this is growing. If we talk about Canada, as per some trusted forums, the count in Canada is close to 7 million people are facing some sort of disability, and which is close to 22% of population having one or the other form of disability. Now, talking about these set of disabilities or impairments, there are many categorization, but if we broadly want to call out visuals, yeah, a person may or may not be able to see things properly. Even I'm wearing these glasses, meaning yes, if I remove them, I might not be able to read everything properly on the computer screen. But yes, there are some major issues also with the complete blindness or maybe low vision. Auditory issues, wherein a person can be completely deaf or maybe hard of hearing. Motor issues, it could be a temporary in nature. A person met with an accident cannot use one of their arms, or something, maybe a bright sunlight wherein we are not able to read the contents on our smartphones or smart devices. So it could be a situational or temporary in nature, or it could be permanent in nature as well. Cognitive issues, sometimes cognitive issues might come as we grow old, or it could be a disease since the childbirth. So there has to be a lot of focus put in from the project teams and the IT teams to think that, are we designing our application thinking these disabilities in mind, or this group of population in mind? Now, what is the answer? I mean, how we are currently handling when it comes to software handling or application designing with respect to accessibility? Assistive technology, also called as AT, is the keyword. These are the devices or the softwares which are being built explicitly to remove that barrier, to remove any obstacle wherein a person with disability is trying to access a particular scenario or a device, and these technologies are helping them do their job. You can see a couple of pictures over here. If you have not seen them or have not seen a person using them, you can definitely Google these devices out, and there are examples like how people are using them to complete their day-to-day job. And when it comes to software, as you can see on the right side, for the impairment which are completely related to vision, complete blindness, these are braille devices, wherein even if you cannot see anything on your screen, there are braille devices, braille keyboards, and there is a training associated with that also, wherein, I mean, a person with this particular disability can even respond to an email faster than a person without any disability if they are trained in this particular device for a longer period of time. And we are only talking about this particular example, but there are many more examples. Let's say a person who is not completely blind, but the person has some color blindness issues. Now, there is an example on the right side, if you see, wherein, let's say there is a message out on a screen where the application says that the green mushrooms are okay to eat, but the other ones are poisonous. I mean, but most of us can read it and can take the next steps, but how about the person with color blindness? For them, I mean, this green and red might not be making any sense, and they might just put themselves in danger. So yes, I mean, there is a requirement that whatever applications or scenarios or instructions you are building on any application for that matter, you cannot think that the color can be the only way to present the fact of that particular piece of information. So you have to think about some more ways to make sure people with disabilities, maybe a person who cannot look at the colors, should also be able to operate. So the designing teams, the UX UI designing teams nowadays are being trained into WCAG principles, and there is a kind of a whole training on ARIA principles in the designing team. So they would make sure that they would never approve and recommend a new screen or a prototype which is only handling the color notifications. Again, the another example is over here. Let's say this is a form, and you can see there is a red border out there. Very easily, we will be able to predict that, okay, the person has left that particular field unfilled, and that is the reason the person cannot proceed, and we have to go there and populate an email address. But again, a person who has some color blindness issues, now for that particular person, the red border doesn't make sense at all. So there has to be a proper error messaging at the top of the screen for such issues with an asterisk, and there are technologies which are going to be being used by these people who can actually interact with the same scenario in a better way. Again, another example wherein you would see there is an image. We can see that image has a person with a cap and a jacket. Now, again, for a person who is completely blind, now on an application, there are some graphs and images which are very important to relay more knowledge to that particular context of that particular application. Now, how a person who is completely blind would ever come to know what is that image all about? So there are coding in place when it comes to front-end developers. They are going to make an entry into the HTML code, which is known as alternate text. What is going to happen is, when there is a device which is known as screen reader, if screen reader device is, or a software, if you are hearing this for the first time, that is the mostly used testing tool when it comes to accessibility testing. Now, screen reader is gonna be just reading out loud all the contents from top to the bottom, and you can navigate through a lot of controls if you are trained on screen reader. But when the screen reader focus is gonna come on this particular image, the HTML code in the alternate text, which is gonna say, let's say, a person with a jacket, that particular text is going to be voiced out loud. Now, the person who cannot see that particular image will still be able to interact and be informed from that particular image, even if that person cannot see it. Another few examples, some screenshots over here. Auditory. I mean, if let's say a person cannot hear at all, or a hard of hearing, there are requirements from WCAG, which is accessibility guidelines, wherein it is a mandate now, if you are putting up an video recording or a podcast, an audio recording, there has to be a transcript for people who cannot hear, but they can actually see the text and can relate to the video getting played and then read the text in parallel. Again, the screen reader combination is going to come into play, wherein screen reader will come on these particular text and read everything, and the person can still see it. So that particular combination is a requirement from WCAG. Now, thinking about, I mean, what are the rules and laws when it comes to accessibility? They are around the globe. Maybe we might have not heard it, or we might have not come across it, but as you can see the list, and list is just a snapshot of a bigger list. Almost in all the countries, there are laws associated with the accessibility. As you can see, the third last item over here, AODA. if you have not heard this on your client projects or your existing applications, we all are being required, if we are into a business where our applications are up in public platform where people can come and interact with your applications or products, we are by default mandated by AODA that our application should be accessible with people with disabilities. Talking about Canada, AODA was being passed as a law in June 2005. Unfortunately, not many people are aware that it's still a law, and there are so many complaints and lawsuits happening already in Ontario when it comes to AODA. We are helping a lot of our clients, not only in Ontario, but also USA and across the country, to make sure they are prepared for accessibility testing and audits. The another law got passed in Manitoba in 2013, 2017, Nova Scotia took that step to pass accessibility law, and in 2018, that is the latest to my knowledge, British Columbia proposed the law as well, which is going to be, I think it is already released or going to be released. I'm not sure about British Columbia, but what this is telling is that there are a lot of attention being put when it comes to accessibility. These are few facts wherein COVID has made this accessibility scenario and requirement even more mandated or needed, I should say. After COVID, everything, the world was only able to move because of digital access and digital enablement. So therefore, you can see that in 2020, the cases when it comes to accessibility were super high, and when it comes to the websites and apps, they are just growing. Now, if we think about, I mean, who are creating these laws, and in which categories these laws are getting created? How can I get more knowledge about requirements? That's the big piece, because I want to contribute. I want to make sure I'm not being caught off guard that my applications were not tested when it comes to accessibility. So Tim Berners-Lee, who is the inventor of web, as most of you might know, is the director of this whole initiative. It all started in 1994, where W3C, World Wide Web Consortium, was being formed in USA. And since then, there were a lot of guidelines when it comes to WCAG. This is what I was referencing to at the start of the presentation, that web content accessibility guidelines are the requirement when it comes to what we should be doing to make sure our applications are being coded, tested, and audited when it comes to accessibility requirement. And you might have heard that WCAG 2.0. Some clients are going to say my requirement is WCAG 2.1, WCAG 2.2. As you see, these new protocols are getting released. They are not changing. It's just that new requirements are getting added because the world is going more digital, and it is not going to stop. It is going to just grow. A little bit more on WCAG. If we talk about WCAG, how they have came up with this particular requirement is in the principle of POUR, P-O-U-R, perceivable. More of the requirement when it comes to color contrast requirements, and making sure there are captions in the videos, transcripts are there. So all those kind of requirement when it comes to perceiving the application comes and fall into P, which is P part of POUR. The another one is operable. When a person starts interacting with the application, let's say keyboard accessibility, a person cannot use the mouse properly because of some motor issues. There is a requirement that the whole application should be accessible through a keyboard. That is operable. Example, understandable. All the error messages and the way the applications are being designed should be understandable, irrespective of the age and the knowledge of that particular user. It should be built keeping old people in mind, youth in mind, and the exact users. Now, coming on to robust, whatever you design today should be compatible with the future technologies also. For an example, the screen reader version of today is working fine on your application, but whether your application has been designed in a compatible way or not. When it comes to WCAG frameworks, as you can see from this slide, the four principles are being divided into 12 guidelines, which are again high-level guidelines of where the requirements are. But in order for us to understand what are these guidelines, we have to understand the 61 requirements which are written very much in detail. Those sounds like overwhelming also at times, because it needs a little bit of learning curve to understand color contrast requirements, keyboard requirements, and how transcripts should be written, and so on and so forth. And they have made all the frameworks into 3 levels, A, AA, and AAA. All the mandates across the laws are level A and AA. So that's where must-have requirements should be met on your application, and AA are should have. AAA is kind of nice to have, but if organizations are able to cover A and AA, most of the time AAA should not be needed. And when it comes to, let's say, comparison between 2.1 and 2.0 and 2.1, it's just that the total count of requirements were 61 over here, and here the total requirement count was 78. So it's just that they are getting added. This is a kind of a zoom in table if you want to see more about requirement. I'm going to skip it for now, but this table is going to give you, like, when we talk about these 61 requirements or 78 requirements, in which categories of the four are more requirements coming from. When it comes to testing tools, we all are part of IT organizations or passion towards quality and making a difference. Quality remains the center stage for most of our outcome. So there are tools. Without tools, any work is going to be either more manual, or the speed of that particular testing report can take more than required time. So there are a lot of tools when it comes to accessibility. The good news is 80% of the tools, or 3/4 of the tools, are open source. They are free of cost. We can use them. And to name some, these are some auditing tools: Wave, AXE, Lighthouse from Google. There are automated scans, which you can do. AXE from DQ is a big name in accessibility. They have provided AXE tool. I'm a fan of that particular tool. Can be added in your browser, and I mean, you can just have accessibility automated reports in fraction of seconds. Dynamic testing, accessibility testing, no matter an organization or a servicing company is going to say that we can do everything automated way, there is going to be 70% of the testing need to be done manually through screen readers and keyboard accessibility and whatnot. These are the names of some key industry leading screen readers, which takes 70% of your accessibility testing time. VoiceOver from iOS, Apple, NVDA, open source. TalkBack from Android. JAWS is a commercial tool. Again, #1 tool being used by vision impaired people. Narrator is again inbuilt tool, comes with your Windows. So with that, yeah, that was the last slide. I wanted to share a lot of more information, but looking at the time, I will stop the presentation and ready to take any questions on this topic.
Thank you. It looks like there's one question in the chat so far. Are you able to see that? It's basically around the expectation that stronger accessibility legislation may come into place in some regions. I guess Manitoba was an example given here in particular, and just wondering if you expect that things like this will lead to an increase in demand for accessibility specific testing, I guess.
Yes, I mean, in all the presentations and client talks, I have suggested that even if your applications or your regions are not looking at accessibility as a mandated requirement right now, it is going to come very soon. in USA, there is already a focus on most of the companies that they don't sign off on an application without accessibility audit. In Canada, I mean, Ontario is making sure that most of the companies are doing it, but when it comes to Manitoba or any other region, my suggestion would be that if there comes an opportunity where you would have to decide on getting accessibility audit, go for WCAG 2.1 AA. That is the safest spot wherein we should be completing our accessibility testing to be ready for the best coverage.
Any other questions, comments? Anybody would like to share? I guess either on the accessibility topic or just about the organization in general. It's like you've covered everything very well.
I hope I was not too fast, but yeah, happy to have any questions, basic, advanced, because we are training, as I mentioned, our new PLATO classes, existing junior and intermediate testers, and helping our clients. So even we are learning when it comes to a new requirement on accessibility. For an example, we are also focusing what's there in 2.2 now in comparison to 2.1. So 2.2 is mainly focused on mobile side of the things, because until 2.1 there was more focus on only the desktops or only the browsers. Now what about these apps, native apps, which we install on our handheld devices? So there were not a lot of clarity, I would say, until 2.1. So we see a lot of new requirements coming into. I think there are 9 new requirements when it comes to 2.2 versus 2.1.
It sounds like you've got a good level of knowledge and expertise, and like, you know, a whole suite of tools that you're familiar with. Is this sort of like almost like an additional service you can potentially offer to your clients then? Like, I would guess that maybe you have some clients who actually aren't as knowledgeable about accessibility testing methodologies, and so then is that something that you can like offer as a service and maybe teach them about as well?
Yeah, we are doing both the services. We train, we also go as like subject matter expert and train IT teams and business teams and designers on accessibility awareness, because that is what we have seen the gap. Not that people are not talented, it's just that people do not know that accessibility WCAG is a direct requirement to the IT softwares. And when it comes to testing services, yes, I mean, what the model we build is, when a client would approach us for functional testing, we will add a service of non-functional testing when it comes to accessibility, because as I said, most of the tools are open source and we have more than 40 people trained from our company. So we provide that service to most of our clients. And if clients have their accessibility team set up internally, I think then they don't need any further testing from us, but we do sanity check and just to let them know that how much of a coverage their team have done if there is a spot which was not being tested properly.
Great. Well, it's a very important topic, and I appreciate all the great information you've shared. I know personally, it was a good reminder when you mentioned the slide about needing to have captions on videos. I thought to myself, oh, I should really turn on the transcript setting for these meetings, because we record them and then post the videos later. So I will remember to do that starting next month because of you. So thank you. And yeah, it sounds like there's some interest in the audience potentially maybe connecting with Denis and the organization to learn more about, like, you know, potential future engagements and how to connect with them. So it looks like Denis is open to you emailing him if you're interested in talking further.
Yes, absolutely. Please do.
Great. Okay, well, unless there's any other questions that people wanted to raise in the last couple minutes here, we're coming to the end of our time. So I'll maybe try to wrap up here. So thanks again to our presenters and for all of you for coming out. Great to be together again in this quality talk series after a few months here, and we'll hope to see you out again next month. Enjoy the rest of your day and your week, and talk to you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
Thanks,
Tina and
everyone.
team, for having us here.
Right. Thanks.